There are lots of ways to stretch your hamstrings. This is one option that I like to use for some people. This is going to be in a sort of half kneeling position. So for this exercise, you're gonna probably need a couple of yoga blocks, and then you're going to get into a kneeling position. The leg that you are stretching your hamstring, so the stuff that goes all the way along the back of the leg, that leg is gonna go in front. Now from here, we are going to really work on leaning forward at your hips. So this is going to be a little bit of a hip hinge. We are thinking about anteriorly tilting the pelvis. So your tailbone is coming up, you're arching your back, you're feeling your back muscles move, and you are feeling an increased stretch in your hamstring. What a lot of people do when they get into a hamstring stretch is kind of just lean forward. While I can feel a little bit of a hamstring stretch here, this is definitely going to be a little bit more engaged and be a little bit more beneficial in owning strength and control in your body, and you're gonna be able to target the hamstrings just a little bit better, and this might feel a little bit better if you have any sort of low back issues. So we're going to think about arching your back, leaning into this position. You should feel a nice deep stretch here. Now, from here, all we're gonna do is hold for the prescribed amount of time. If you have a prescribed amount of intensity, the way to make this more intense is arch your back more and lean your belly button forward towards your toes, not your chest, but your belly button. Your chest kind of stays up in like a proud chest type of movement. That's gonna make it more intense. Ways that might make it less intense are gonna be backing off just a little. Maybe not arching your back quite as much, or maybe just coming out of it a little bit. Again, we wanna start at a low intensity and the prescribed amount of time and build up our time from there and then make our intensity more. So typically we're working up to that 2-minute intensity. Once you've held your stretch for the prescribed amount of time, you are then going to do PAILs rails, or if you are gonna do PAILs rails, here's how we're gonna do it. So for PAILs, we're gonna contract the hamstring stuff by thinking about driving the leg down into the ground. So we are thinking about doing this motion, and you're thinking about trying to pull earth down and in towards you. So you should feel those muscles contract. It might feel like you want to do this, but you are going to not allow your knee to bend, and we're just pushing into the ground. You're gonna start at a light percentage of a contraction. You're gonna ramp that intensity up to the prescribed amount of time, intensity for the prescribed amount of time and hold it. Then ramp back down and hold that position. Now, the rails contraction is going to be the opposite side, tissues or stuff. That is going to be the quads and the hip flexors. To do this movement, what we are thinking about, to do this contraction, we are thinking about doing this movement, lifting our leg up. Now, your foot is going to be glued to the ground, so we do not want to actually be able to lift the leg up. The goal is just to contract those muscles. So we should be kind of actively pulling ourselves deeper into this position for rails. So you're going to think about making your foot lighter on the ground, squeeze the quad, think about lifting, while also simultaneously arching your back to pull yourself into a deeper position. So we are thinking about trying to actively kind of compress this tissue and get into a deeper hamstring stretch. For some people, you might not need to focus as much about the back and just work on getting a little bit more strength of your hip flexor or your front of your hips. But if you're somebody who's doing this to improve their hamstring flexibility, you're definitely going to not want your back to move and really isolate the actual hip and hamstring tissues. So if that's the case, then we are not letting our backs move, or we are arching more and finding a deeper stretch as we're doing rails. That would be the completion of one round. So you're ramping your rails up to that desired intensity and holding, and then ramping back down as your program says. That is going to be one round of PAILs and rails. If you are doing multiple rounds, you can either rest or go right into it, depending on what your program says. And that is going to be everything you need to know about your hamstring stretch with PAILs rails.